All right, next, let's talk about the possibility conversation. All right, next, let's talk about the possibility conversation. So after you've been through appreciation, and you can spend a long time in appreciation, which is good because this is a time bank, and logging all of those hours really do count. You can spend just as long in a possibility conversation. So what is a possibility conversation? Before one gets into strategy or getting into criticism or getting into why something will not work or what's it going to take for something to work, you start asking the possibility questions. What does this make possible? So, talking about how to create a quadrillion-dollar GDP didn't just come out of nowhere. It came from years of questioning. What does time banking make possible? What does collaboration make possible? What does reverse market mechanics make possible? So these are all questions that have been already asked and have been discussed. So what does a quadrillion-dollar GDP make possible? Well, what it makes possible is that if managed, in a very open, transparent fashion, it means everybody would have a six-figure base income. Okay, well, what does that make possible? Well, what it makes possible is that we can leverage time, to change the current system, to extract from those who are extracting. Okay, what does that make possible? Well, what it makes possible is deeper conversation and deeper honesty, deeper trust. So that's where I stop for a moment. Okay, well, there's a lot that makes possible, but what does deeper honesty and deeper trust, what does it take? What does it take to make that happen? So we're going to talk about the bridge. What is the bridge? The bridge is a conversation that we're going to be holding in the beginning of 2022 between mental health clinicians and consumers. So, we want to talk about how artistic expression, comes into play with healing and therapy, and why does there seem to be a resistance to that? We want to have those, spiritual, interspiritual conversations. Why does psychology reject spirituality? And in some cases, vice versa. Why does spirituality reject psychology sometimes? So that's the conversation we're having between clinicians and consumers. So a little bit of history on that first. We're going back now to about 2003. Yeah, about 2003. So about 18 years ago, I had done an improv. I had facilitated an improv and drama workshop within the Mental Health Association, one of the associations here in Pennsylvania. And we met for a year, and it was a long journey, but we got to the point where we performed an improv show in front of, I don't know, maybe 100, 200 people. And, we were really sparking, a good conversation. We were demonstrating how sometimes clinicians they're not always present for their patients, for their clients. And we showed that in graphic fashion. So instead of allowing that outlet, allowing that program to continue, our government funding and our clinicians kind of just stopped communicating with us. I think it made them feel a little uncomfortable, even though it empowered, the consumers. So fast forward to about 2017, I meet Janet Berkowitz and Nefertiti Rosa, and we've started rehearsing and rewriting a play called The Wizard of Iz, which is about Dorothy, Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. Dorothy, having to put her feelings on trial, really talk about emotions, and we really address the issues of suicide and bullying, and some of the conversations we have had, during the performances in 2019 when we were doing that live in different mental health associations, different mental health outlets, and the Zoom calls, the Zoom performances we've done in 2022. The conversation is deepening. So we took time off of performing in 2021, and we really checked in with each other, and we decided we really want to have this conversation about what is it going to take, for clinicians to take this seriously. What is it going to take for, the clinicians to be more open about the healing process? What is it going to take for maybe, someone to, for the experts to maybe take a step down and use a little bit more generous listening? And what's it going to take for consumers to step up and take a little bit more personal responsibility for their, for their challenges? So the people involved with this, again, is Nefertiti Rosa from our core fellowship, Janet Berkowitz, who is the writer of the play, and she's also a peer. So we have invited a group. I think we're looking at about 7 or 8 at this first round of this conversation, to have the greater conversation, to have appreciation, possibility, invitation, healthy dissension, responsibility, and then commitment. So we're going to be exploring that pattern, that integrity pattern here. And what is generated from that conversation, we will invite others who might be interested in going a little deeper with that. So the takeaways at the moment is that again, we're kind of playing with the power structure here, playing with not only the power structure within the mental health industry, but with with professional commerce in general. I keep landing back on how do we come back to this attitude or this belief that we're stewards, and that proprietary solutions might have taken us as far as we can go at this point. It's time to start opening up and having the deeper conversations. Another takeaway that I've learned from this past year in considering this conversation, this deeper conversation with clinicians, is how art plays into it, artistic expression, not just the performing arts, but the visual arts. My wife is an art therapist, and we talk often about what are the barriers in managed healthcare. What are the barriers, when something that's supposed to be healing, like the mental health industry, does have bureaucracy. So we've had conversations throughout the year, Janet and I, with Amelia Duran, and on her podcast, The Porthole to Justice. So that has been a great relationship and a great outlet for really talking about opening up the conversation about how artistic expression really does kind of heal these gaps in communication, and heals what is missing within the system. So those are some of the takeaways from this year. Another takeaway is that we open up the conversation. It's like, okay, well, let's talk about spirituality. Not assuming one path is right, not assuming one's experience is more relevant than another, but just having the conversation. What has been your experience with spirituality? What has been your journey like? We don't want to judge it. We don't want to we don't want to evangelize it. It's like, let's just talk about it. Does spirituality have a place here, in whatever small group is emerging? So so those are the takeaways as we move forward with the bridge conversation, and thinking of new ways to spark conversation with the play, The Wizard of Iz. So the value, again, the value is integrity, and we have a passion for transparency. So my observation has been a lot of people are afraid to really get underneath the cover, underneath the hood of what's going on, and talk about the emotional, really what's going on emotionally, underneath the surface. So we have a passion for transparency. We cultivate that passion for transparency. It's transparency that's going to help us bridge those gaps in socioeconomic status, bridge those gaps in politics, in government, in business, in corporate culture. So the value is a passion for transparency. So what are the possibilities? So the possibilities are deeper conversations. What is it going to take to deepen the conversations? What is it going to take for the artist, to be respected? what is it going to take for the scientist to be respected, and what is it going to take for the artist to respect the scientist, and vice versa? So those are the possibilities. So what is it going to take to, what is it going to take to invite others, who are very skeptical, who don't, have a frame of reference for these kinds of conversation? What is it going to take for them to, to join us? So what does it make possible? We talked earlier about, what does changing the financial system, what does changing, changing our relationship to time, how does that change the financial system? These are all possibilities that we will explore. All right, so that was, the possibility conversation, talked a little bit about the Bridge project, and I'll be back tomorrow to discuss the invitation conversation and core fellowships.